What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, and today, once again, we're going to be talking about the offensive line. Now, this topic is actually based on an article that my usual co-host, Alex, wrote today. Make sure to go check that out, empiresportsmedia.com. You know, this podcast is presented by Empire Sports Media, but we're going to go over some of the points that Alex makes in that article and kind of just discuss the topic of the Giants offensive line and how Joe Schoen has kind of rebuilt it in a very specific way to provide a lot of versatility and a lot more depth than the Giants have had in recent years. So it's going to be kind of interesting to take a look at those little, the depth and the versatility aspects of this line. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. And the first thing that I want to talk about is how the Giants have placed a very heavy emphasis this offseason on acquiring talented players that have versatility. And that seemed not only on the offensive line, but, at the skill positions and on defense as well. When you take a look at guys like Wan'Dale Robinson has the ability to line up as a running back, as a slot receiver. And you take a look at other guys. Daniel Bellinger has that run blocking, but also receiving aspect to his game as a tight end. And on the defensive side of the ball, Julian Love, very versatile. Xavier McKinney, very versatile. Dane Belton and Cordell Flott, also players that played in multiple positions. So you're kind of seeing a trend here with the New York Giants where they're drafting players that don't have experience just playing in one position, doing it one type of way, and expecting them to enter the NFL and just succeed at that. They're getting guys that have the ability to play in multiple spots so that if they fail at one spot, maybe they can just move it to another spot. They can move to another spot and hopefully find success there. Or keep in mind that the Giants had a lot of injuries last year. If a player gets injured, well, they might not have to go out into free agency and sign anyone to make a replacement midseason now. They probably have a guy who has experience playing that position and can just move over. And then there's another guy that can move into that spot. So there's a lot of versatility to the New York Giants roster right now, which is super important, as I said, for injuries and because if a young player who's developing in one position just isn't getting it, it's not clicking, they're not able to work it out and win a spot at that position, maybe they can transition to another position. And I think that's something that we might see maybe even on the offensive line and definitely in the secondary. Again, Aaron Robinson, Darnay Holmes, these are some guys that might be able to play inside or outside. We will see. And it's going to be a long summer of training camp and practices and position battles that will ultimately determine where everybody's going to play. But again, let's go ahead and discuss the offensive line. I know position battle, speaking of that, there is a position battle on the Giants offensive line at left guard. And a couple of the guys that play left guard are actually guys that play multiple positions and they're just competing for the left guard starting job because it's really the only one that's up for grabs right now. So let's go ahead and talk about the offensive linemen, especially the ones that Joe Schoen brought in this offseason and the versatility that they have. So starting off with Mark Glewinsky. Now, Mark Lewinsky was signed to a 3-year, $20 million deal by Joe Schoen and the New York Giants this offseason to be the starting right guard, cemented in as the starting right guard. He's one of the most stable players on the Giants offensive line. He was pretty good for Indianapolis, played with the Colts. They have one of the best offensive lines in football, and he was one of the bright spots on that offensive line. I'm not saying he was the best player on it. Of course, that goes to Quentin Nelson, but Mark Lewinsky was a solid, reliable starting right guard that put in some work and played some pretty good games, especially down the stretch on the second half of the 2021 season. Above average play on a consistent basis, but something you might not know about Mark Lewinsky is he's not just a right guard. In his career, he has 1,233 snaps at left guard in addition to his 4,023 snaps at right guard. If the Giants ever need him to transition over to the left side for any kind of reason, maybe some injuries go down, whatever the case might be, he's more than capable of doing so without skipping a beat because he's already got some experience playing at that left guard position. So kind of just one of those guards right there who can move along the interior of the offensive line, can play right guard, can play left guard in a pinch if he needs to. So you're looking at Mark Lewinsky, you're saying above average player, major upgrade at right guard, but also arguably an upgrade at left guard in terms of the versatility, because if he has to play there, he can do it probably better than anyone has in the past 3 years or so. So definitely interesting to see there that, even as early on as the free agency period when the Giants were going out and made their only splash signing on the offensive line with Glewinsky, they were emphasizing the positional versatility that he has. And of course, our big splash this offseason on the offensive line was the 7th overall pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, Evan Neal, the mammoth out of Alabama. Love Evan Neal, love what he provides to the Giants, but this is a player that's played all across the offensive line. In 2021, he wasn't the right tackle that the Giants are expecting him to be. He was a left tackle for Alabama, played 1,071 snaps as the starting left tackle for Alabama in his final collegiate season. Then you take a look at 2020, he started 765 snaps at right tackle. So he has the experience playing on the right side of the line, which is what I always argued before the draft, saying he is the best fit for the Giants because they don't need a left tackle. They need a right tackle. And Evan Neal has the most right tackle experience out of the top prospects. And that is, I think, why they selected him. And he is probably, ready to step in and be a starting right tackle without much transition because he's already played that in the past. But keep in mind, those aren't the only two positions that he's played. He's also played on the interior, 723 snaps at left guard in 2019. So he's got the ability to play inside, got the ability to play outside, and he's got that value because if the Giants ever have an injury at one position and they need him to move across and play somewhere else, he can. And they can just find someone else to play right tackle. Easier said than done, of course, but it's just important to note that he has the ability to move across the offensive line if there's ever an emergency situation where he needs to. And also keep in mind, rookies sometimes look like a sure thing. Guaranteed guy, right? There's no guarantees in the NFL. The draft is a crapshoot. I believe Evan Neal is going to be a rock solid starting right tackle for the Giants for years to come. But what if he's not? What if he struggles at right tackle? Well, maybe he moves over to left guard, left tackle, somewhere else that he's already comfortable playing because he's done it before. Maybe he can find success in another position. Very possible. But of course, I'm expecting him to succeed at right tackle. That's why I wanted him to be the 7th overall pick so badly. I actually wanted him to be the 5th overall pick. But without further ado, let's move to the next guy on the list, and that's Jon Feliciano. Now, Jon Feliciano was signed by the Giants to be the starting center. So it's interesting because he's actually never really played center. He has played center, 323 total snaps in his career, but you compare that to the other positions he's played, and he's very inexperienced at center compared to the other positions. So 323 total snaps at center compared to 689 at left guard and 1,789 at right guard. So traditionally speaking, throughout his career, Jon Feliciano has been a starting right guard. That's what he is. But the Giants are already ready to move him over to center. And I think that's probably a lot of that is due to the fact that they signed Mark Lewinsky at right guard, so they don't want Jon Feliciano competing there because Glewinsky is going to win that battle, and he's going to be the starter. So Jon Feliciano could battle at left guard, but as we're going to get into in a second here, there's kind of a position battle going on there already. And the real position that makes sense where the Giants desperately need a starter is center. And Jon Feliciano fits that bill. He's a quality player. He's got the versatility to play anywhere on the interior. And he can be the starter at center, especially considering he has that dirtbag mentality that Bobby Johnson requires. He's got a relationship with Bobby Johnson, and he's a leader. So putting him in that center position where it's basically the quarterback of the offensive line makes a lot of sense to me. And then you move over to left guard, and we got two players here that are both very versatile and both competing for the starting left guard position. First of all, Max Garcia. He's got 297 snaps at center and 834 at right guard. But primarily, he's played a lot of left guard and a little bit of tackle, I think. No, just left guard in his career. He's played pretty much all over the interior of the offensive line. Again, almost 300 snaps at center, over 800 at right guard. And I know that he's played hundreds of snaps at left guard as well and started plenty of games there. In fact, he was a Pro Bowl alternate last season, even though he gave up 5 sacks and 15 hurries across 864 total snaps at left guard. But he does have that versatility is kind of my main point here. He's a solid player. Again, Pro Bowl alternate. Take that with a grain of salt. The Pro Bowl, you always take with a grain of salt. But Max Garcia is at least a quality average player, and the Giants have needed quality average players on the offensive line for years, and they got that now with Max Garcia. And I really like Max Garcia and what he brings to the Giants, and I really like the versatility that he brings to the team, having the ability to play every single position on the interior of the offensive line. Now, a kind of different player who's also competing for the left guard position is Joshua Azir, 67th overall pick in this year's draft, the second third round pick for the New York Giants, UNC guard / tackle. So everybody else that we mentioned here, other than Evan Neal, is an interior offensive lineman that has the ability to play different positions on the interior. Like I said, Evan Neal being the outlier, an outside guy that can play inside and outside. But the rest of these guys are inside guys that can play anywhere inside. Joshua Azir is different because he's an inside guy that can play outside. And that's also really important and valuable because imagine there's ever an injury to Andrew Thomas. I mean, we don't even have to imagine it. He was injured last year. He suffered an injury and he missed some time. Well, imagine if that happens once again, knock on wood, God forbid. But if Andrew Thomas were to get injured, the Giants would need someone quality to step in and take his place at left tackle. Joshua Azir could be that guy, whether he's starting at left guard or not. Because if he's starting at left guard, like I just mentioned, Max Garcia is there, even maybe Mark Lewinsky, even maybe John Feliciano. You've got some guys that can step in there and play left guard right away in that pinch. Shane Lemieux as well. Don't forget about him. So if the case is where Joshua Azidu is starting at left guard, Andrew Thomas goes down with an injury, you can just slide him out to left tackle since he's got experience playing there. And one of those other guys that I mentioned, Lemieux, Garcia, Feliciano, Glewinsky, any of them can step right into the left guard position and take his place. So it's really important now. This is kind of looking at the versatility aspect, but also looking at the depth aspect of the Giants offensive line. I mentioned like 3 or 4 names right there that can slide right into a position if there's an injury. And that's super, super important because the Giants didn't have that last year. They were making a lot of midseason acquisitions to get some guys, and it was putting them in a tight pinch very frequently throughout the season with a revolving door of starters at left guard and center. But again, let's take a look at Azidu. He has played reps at both left tackle and left guard. And here's a fun fact. He would often transition in the middle of a drive. So he would be playing left guard on some of the snaps on a drive. First down, now he's playing left tackle all of a sudden. First down, now he's playing left guard all of a sudden. Just kind of moving all around the offensive line in the middle of a drive. Very interesting, very curious. Not exactly sure why that was UNC's tactic and strategy with Joshua Azidu, but it's pretty cool to know that he has that ability to kind of just on a pinch, in the blink of an eye, switch positions, go play outside or go play inside, depending on which one he was doing first. He can just do that instantly. A lot of versatility there, can kick out wide, help the team in multiple facets, and you got to love that. So that's kind of like the versatility section of this. But now, again, we're going to talk about the depth and how Joe Schoen has placed an emphasis on acquiring depth on the offensive line. Last year, everybody was frustrated. The 2021 NFL draft, I mean, there were some good moments in there for sure. The trade down, I like Kadarius Toney a lot. Some mid-round picks that I like as well from Dave Gettleman. But the biggest complaint that we all had is, why were there no offensive linemen drafted? There was just rounds and rounds where we're like, oh, this is it. Offensive lineman right here. Some guard help, some tackle help. Nothing. It just never came to fruition. They never drafted an offensive lineman. And Joe Schoen is not going with the same tactic. He went in free agency, signed a bunch of offensive linemen. Undrafted free agents, signed some offensive linemen. In the draft, drafted some offensive linemen. He put a heavy emphasis on getting depth and talent on the offensive line, which you absolutely love to see if you're a New York Giants fan. Some of the names that he acquired: Matt Gono, Corey Cunningham, Jamil Douglas, Roy Batika. I'm sorry I butchered that name. This is the first time I've actually talked about him on the podcast, but the guy that they acquired in the international program, who knows Osi Umenyiora, they signed him. He's an offensive lineman. Of course, Joshua Azidu, Max Garcia, John Feliciano, Mark Lewinsky, and Evan Neal. A bunch of names added to the list of offensive linemen on the New York Giants roster. Again, if you're a Giants fan, you have to love to see that Joe Schoen has already placed a huge emphasis on acquiring depth and talent and versatile talent across the offensive line as early as his first offseason. Phenomenal stuff there. You love to see it. So the Giants not only have incredible versatility on this offensive line, as the title of this video suggests, they have incredible depth on the offensive line. Now, I'm not saying that all of these guys are world-class talents and they're elite and they're going to be Pro Bowlers. Some of them might be. I think Andrew Thomas and Evan Neal have that potential. But for the most part, the Giants got a lot of quality guys that can at least provide average to above reps on the offensive line. And again, that is something that they were missing in recent years. They were getting a lot of below average and awful play. And another name that I forgot to mention there on the depth, again, is Shane Lemieux. Matt Parrott as well, once he's back from that back injury. So there's a lot of depth here. There are a lot of guys that can step in a pinch and start some games. There's starter experience in Shane Lemieux, starter experience in Matt Parrott. They've got some guys out there. So it's really just about developing all the young talent and building this offensive line into not only being, average and having a bunch of quality average guys, but one day, hopefully, having a bunch of above average guys and having these guys develop into true studs like we totally expect Andrew Thomas to continue to develop into, and as we expect Evan Neal to develop into one day. So that's kind of like the breakdown on the whole offensive line there, just giving you some insight and some stats on the positional versatility that a lot of these guys have, and really just putting into perspective for you, hopefully, how much depth and how many players there are that are quality and capable of playing on this offensive line. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed. Comment down below what you think of the New York Giants offensive line, what you think of Joe Schoen and what he's done for the offensive line this offseason, and who do you think is going to win that starting left guard position. It's going to be a really interesting camp battle that's really going to gear up in July when training camp starts. You know that we're going to be covering it daily on Fireside Giants, so stay tuned to that. But let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Who's going to be the starting left guard in 2022? And what's your favorite acquisition that Joe Schoen made on the offensive line other than Evan Neal? Evan Neal's obviously the favorite, but other than that, who's your favorite signing or draft pick? Let me know in the comment section. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video. If you're new, please subscribe, ring the bell so you don't miss a video, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.